so that the whole world, which currently, as I know from watching the press around the world, rolls its eyes every time Mr. Trump says something odd or bizarre, which is almost every day. If you think that's funny, think again, because this man is in a key position to do something which the world may never recover from. Something has happened to allow this mentality to be in this position as we speak should really terrify everybody.
Yeah. Yeah. Richard, here is what Donald Trump said about the energy and the case of energy, the importance of that for the ongoing war that, between the United States and Iran.
Anticipate that the strikes we're seeing this week against Iran will expand? Are you considering hitting energy targets or other locations inside of Iran?
I'll save the energy targets for last, but ultimately we'll hit energy targets, yeah. But we're going to hit them very hard tonight. We're going to hit them very hard tomorrow night. We're going to hit them very hard the night after. And then next week it gets really bad for them because next week comes the power plants. Next week comes the bridges. We're going to knock out all their power plants. We're going to knock out all their bridges unless they get to the table and negotiate.
First of all, my understanding is that the Iranian government has now formally said that the memorandum of understanding is, as far as they're concerned, no longer in effect. So the United States has violated it. Now Iran rejects it. So it's gone. It was a temporary effort to try to reach some sort of accommodation. I think what happened, in my own judgment, is that the president signed it because he has to get this over with in a reasonable amount of time. And then it was explained to him that he had given away more than he could politically manage with his own base here in the United States, which is probably true. And so he simply, as he does so often, proceeded to act in such a way as if he had not signed this document. And the Iranians waited a few days, as has become a pattern, and then decided, oh, I see, so that's not relevant anymore either. And meanwhile, the war has expanded. There is a way in which that is always probable in a war. What you need to understand is the war, when it breaks out, changes things. And everybody in the area, everyone affected, every other country, every company, many population groups, as they are affected by the war, they change their behavior. They accommodate. For example, people leave a part of the world and move somewhere else. They become refugees to escape the war. That means new kinds of pressures exist on transportation facilities, on the countries to which they move, and on and on. Meanwhile, countries reassess their situation. The crisis faced by neighboring countries, by countries affected by the closing of the Strait of Hormuz, they are all adjusting. And as they adjust, they can often, not at all necessary, but frequent, bump into one another and cause frictions that lead countries to decide now is a time when we can go to war. I don't know the details, and maybe we never will be, but it is quite possible to spin out this scenario that Saudi Arabia, pressured by the whole developments there, caught between the United States, with which it wishes to maintain a long-standing relationship, and a new face towards China, and a recognition it's going to have to get along with Iran now in a new way that it didn't have available before, made some decisions. For example, trying to get a few oil tankers through the Strait of Hormuz. And the Iranians, having said, no, you can't do that if you don't get the permit, hit them with a missile. Or maybe they didn't do that. Maybe the Houthis did it on their own and zapped a Saudi thing because it was violating. We'll never know that. And then something begins.
The discussion now shifts from diplomacy to the possibility of a broader regional conflict. Wolff argues that once multiple countries begin adjusting their military and economic strategies, the likelihood of unintended escalation increases. His point is that wars often expand through a series of reactions rather than a single decision.
One of the reasons you don't do what Trump and Israel did is because it risks a wider war. For Israel, that made sense because they hoped that a wider war would bring the United States deeper into the situation. They've been trying for years to get the United States to be militarily more active, helping Israel in that area. They are now achieving, slowly, painfully, and at enormous human cost, what they were going to do. The question really is only, I don't mean to be simple-minded, but I do think, working on this all the time, that the crucial question here is whether the Iranian people and their government have the solidarity, have the commitment to withstand the effort to terrorize them into submission, because that's what this is. Endless bombing, endless missile, endless drones, using the firepower of the United States gathered there is the only American effort now being made to deal with this situation. So if that's what you have, then the key question is, can the recipient of all of that withstand it? The Iranians have already shown the world we can fight back. We have missiles too, and they do. And we have drones, and we know how to use them, and we have proven our skill at using them. So the United States has a real enemy, not just in the people. The recognition how important the enemy of the people is that there's no landing of American troops because that's too dangerous. The cost of that for the United States would be even greater. Large numbers of dead soldiers coming back. It's not the political need between now and November when there's an election. So the people have shown you can't do that. So all they got is the air power, the missiles and the drones, which the Iranians can return in good measure. The United States is willing to continue because the missiles and drones, really, they're not coming to the United States. They're coming to American bases in the Gulf states. And that's serious. But they have decided clearly they can absorb that damage. Iran is already doing more damage to the military apparatus of the United States than anyone I know of in a long time. It's a remarkable already sign. But if they are solid, if they are held together, then time is on their side.
Here, Wolff focuses on strategy rather than battlefield tactics. He argues that endurance and long-term pressure may become more important than immediate military victories. Whether viewers agree with that assessment or not, it reflects his belief that prolonged conflicts often become contests of economic and political resilience.
And that is absolutely crucial. And the reason time is on their side is really clear. Number one, they have used up, and by they I mean mostly the United States and China, but they have used up their oil reserves, or most of them. One of the reasons the price of oil has not risen more than it already has is the determined behavior of the United States to pump oil into the market, and the determination of China that used to buy a lot of international oil to rely instead on its own reserves and the limitless supply that they can get from Russia. I mean, all of these are very, very important. So here's the problem. The United States doesn't have that much more oil. And the Chinese may not have enough, may not want to deplete their reserves. They know that the United States, once it's done in the Middle East, will in fact be looking more and more at China in the years ahead. They have to see what kind of policies they may face. The United States' control on the world oil market, something our colleague Michael speaks to very often on our program here. All of these things mean that there may not be more reserves. China may return into the market, and there'll be more demand, and less reserve, less supply, more demand, less supply. Then the price of oil, and that will mean the price of gasoline, which never came down that much anyway, will be boosted up again, and then we have the inflationary impact that has not yet so far become unmanageable. Mr. Trump is being told, that I know, that he has to worry about that. The Iranians don't have to worry about that. The Iranians have in their alliance with Russia and China a secure backstop for the things they need that they can't otherwise obtain. And by the way, talking about expanding war, one of the things that Iran relies on is the passage of boats in the Caspian Sea from Russia to Iran. That is a crucial passageway, given the mountainous territory and what the land looks like up there. That's a very important thing. And the Ukrainians are trying to disrupt all of this. They have nothing left. Their economy is finished. Their military is mostly gone. They are left with warfare, with drones. And so they're trying to use massive drones, obviously paid for and supplied by Europe, to paralyze Russian shipping in the Sea of Azov, in the Black Sea, and in the Caspian Sea. And so you could see literally the two wars are beginning to impinge one upon the other. So that when you hear predictions that this could be the beginning of World War III, that's what people mean, that this is a war that is spreading. All wars have that capability, but we're now watching the capability becoming a reality as everybody adjusts. The strategic decision of Ukrainian drones is shaped by the Houthis doing to the Saudi Arabians a new move in the Red Sea. I mean, people should understand that's one of the dangers. So that the whole world, which currently, as I know from watching the press around the world, rolls its eyes every time Mr. Trump says something odd or bizarre, which is almost every day. If you think that's funny, think again, because this man is in a key position to do something which the world may never recover from. Something has happened to allow this mentality to be in this position as we speak, should really terrify everybody.
The conversation expands beyond military operations into economics. Wolff argues that disruptions to energy markets could influence inflation, fuel prices, and financial stability well beyond the Middle East. His broader message is that geopolitical conflicts often produce economic consequences that reach households around the world.
Nima, I do want to remind people of something that gets lost in these conversations, because it's not just about political maneuvering or military maneuvering. There is a fundamental reason this happens. We live in an economic system, capitalism, in which the following is understood by virtually every business. You must work hard, squeeze as much profit out of your business as you can, and then take the largest portion of it that you can and plow it back into the business to build it and make it grow. Because growing is your best way to survive. If you don't build it up, if you don't take your profits and get the next best machine, a competitor will, and then you're finished. So the urge becomes crazy. Capitalism is an expansive system. Look, the reason the Middle East is in the problem it is now is that the capitalism born in Britain in the 16th and 17th century and then expanded to Western Europe had to always expand. It drew on the raw materials and the workers in its immediate environment first. But as it ran out of them in its maniacal growth processes, it had to go further afield. It had to collect more and more workers, way more than its agriculture could feed. So it had to find food outside. It had to find raw materials in an ever broader way. And we get modern colonialism for the last 2 centuries. The whole world gets divided up. Britain particularly, but France, and carve up the Middle East. The countries there have the boundaries they do because the colonials worked it out. That's where all of this comes from. The United States inherited, after World War II, all those empires. The colonial powers culminated 2 centuries or more of colonialism by blowing each other up in World Wars I and II. It tells you about capitalism. It tells you where that ends up, where it tends to go. And they blew themselves. They so weakened themselves that the global South saw its chance. A weakened England, India can become free. Right? We're living through that. We are living the first decades of the anti-colonial upsurge, the global south saying no. That's what this is, a small chapter of. We are watching in one corner Iran. They're finding their way to take advantage of the relative weakness. United States' empire is now shrinking. They were able to see the United States lost the war in Vietnam. It lost the war in Afghanistan. It could not prevail in Iraq, and it isn't doing well in Ukraine. Okay, it's a lesson here. There's a lesson here. They can find a way to become an independent country taking care of its people, which they couldn't do before. That's part of what's going on in the world, and it will continue to go on no matter what happens in Iran.
This is the interview's central thesis. Wolff argues that the conflict should be viewed within the context of larger changes in global power. Rather than seeing the crisis as an isolated event, he believes it reflects a broader transformation in the international system. That interpretation shapes the rest of his analysis.
The last couple of days, statistics were released. The Chinese economic growth this year will be in the neighborhood of 4.3%. And the headlines across American media, because I read a dozen of them, all carried the same message. The slowest rate of economic growth in China in years, less than the 5% they had hoped for, less than the 5% they got last year. Is that correct? Yes. But what is left out is the simple fact that 4.3% would occasion ticker tape parades down Broadway in New York. It would be so exciting. The economic growth this year in the United States will be 2.1%. Half. And that's what it's been for 40 years. Chinese growth, twice that of the United States. That's why today the manufacturing sector of China is larger than that of the United States and Britain and Germany combined. We're not in the same universe. Americans and many of your listeners in Europe don't yet allow themselves to think through what that means, what I just told you. This is not an endorsement of China. China has lots of problems. It's not. But you need to understand that that kind of economic growth gives you the ability to produce goods and services on a scale that no other country can come close to. People may not know the drones that are now being used in warfare. The greatest maker of drones are the Chinese. They're selling their drones all over the world. Some of the drones Ukraine sends to Russia are Chinese. Some of the drones Russia sends to Ukraine are Chinese. And this is happening more and more. The best electric vehicle in the world, best and cheapest, BYD, Chinese company. No American company, Tesla included, can compete with them. That competition is over. All the highest tech coming out of Silicon Valley has something similar to it happening in China. And an increasing number of the Chinese versions are superior. And more will be coming. Why? Because they are creating an army of high-tech engineers, many more than are graduating from this country. If we made that investment here, we would get comparably better results. But we don't, because we're governed by the private profit that makes you do this or not. China isn't. That's their secret. They're going to continue outgrowing. Time, in their view, is on their side too. The longer we go, the more the gap between their double rate of growth to that of the United States. Look, Europe doesn't even get 2%. So China is even more advanced over Europe than it is over the United States. We live in a different world economy. And at the risk of overplaying this argument, I would say that larger picture is why China is quiet on the edges and not participating here, and why what is happening in Iran is a reflection of a new world economy that the old dominating country, U.S., is frightened by and wants to hold back, whereas Iran has the much nicer position of being part of breaking out of the old pattern into a new and better place. And if they can get that clear in the minds of their people, they'll hold out long enough to win this one.